In the world of football, Brazil is the superpower. Thousands turn out just to watch them train. Today's Brazilian team contains superstars like Ronaldinho, Kaká, and Robinho. In Brazil, football is in the blood, and it has been like this for generations. From the beaches of Rio to the back streets of Sao Paulo, there is always some sort of game going on. This passion for the game has produced many champions. But there is only one man who is known as the king of football, Pelé. In 1957, in his first full year with Santos, and at the age of 16, Pelé became the Campeonato Paulista's highest scorer. He remained the league's top scorer for 9 consecutive years. The 1958 World Cup in Sweden, and immediately the young Pelé was in Brazil's national team.
My first World Cup, I was 17 years old, was a beautiful history because 8 years before, Brazil lost for Uruguay, the World Cup in the 50s. And my father was crying, with a lot of Brazilians there. And then my father used to say, oh, men should be strong, men doesn't cry. Then I saw my father cry when Brazil lost the game. Then I told him, Father, no, don't worry, I'm gonna win one World Cup for you, don't worry. I was 9 to 10 years old. Then 8 years late, I was in Sweden with Brazil with 17 years old. Brazil won the World Cup. That's a gift for God because I don't know why I promised to my father.
It was Brazil's first World Cup, with Pelé scoring twice in the final against the host nation. In 1962 in Chile, Brazil won the World Cup for a second time. By now, Pelé at the age of 21 was an international star, and he was targeted with rough treatment. After scoring in the first game against Mexico, injury limited his contribution. Just 4 months before his World Cup campaign in 1966, Pelé and his new bride, Rosemary, arrived in Germany. So great was Pelé's international reputation that the couple were dogged by journalists. But Europe was interested in Pelé for other reasons. The top clubs had been trying to tempt him to play in Italy or Spain, but Brazil's national treasure was staying put at Santos. At the start of what they had hoped would be a private honeymoon, cameras and the press continued to be intrusive, placing enormous stress on their new marriage. Just one day after her wedding, Rosemary was discovering what it would be like sharing her life with a superstar. Soon Pelé and Rosemary would have their first daughter, Kelly Cristina. The 1966 World Cup tournament was held in England, and having won the 2 previous cups, Brazil were the outright favourites. 6 of Pelé's Santos teammates were in the Brazil squad. Lula, the Santos coach, had stopped likening Pelé to other players, saying he was incomparable. Rival World Cup teams started focusing on Pelé and the other Brazilian playmaker, Garrincha. In the group stage, Brazil were defeated by Hungary and Portugal in controversial circumstances. The English referees seemed to miss an unusually large number of fouls to the top Brazilian players. After an incident in the game against Portugal, Pelé limped for the rest of the game. This was before the days of red and yellow cards. Brazil did not make it beyond the group matches. After the tournament, a disappointed Pelé declared he would not play any more World Cup matches. So dazzling was Pelé's on-field performance that he was dubbed O Rei, the King. An act of parliament was passed to prevent Pelé being lured to Europe, and the Brazilian government ensured he was the most highly paid professional sportsman in the world. A wax effigy of Pelé was displayed in London, and he found himself moving in exalted circles. To this day, heads of state and politicians are still keen to meet the legend. And because he was so widely known as the King, crowning ceremonies became part of Pelé's ceremonial life. Museums around the world have different versions of Pelé's crown. Now Santos were touring the world during breaks in the domestic season to play exhibition matches. The effect of these games was astonishing. During the Nigerian Civil War, a truce was declared so that people could safely see Pelé play. The United Nations was starting to take notice, especially as Pelé had an affinity with the young. But not all the exhibition matches were triumphs. A friendly game played at El Campen Stadium in Bogota resulted in a melee, with Pelé being sent off. This sparked a riot in the crowd who had come to see Pelé play. Officials sent the referee off and reinstated Pelé. In November 1969, Pelé had scored his 999th goal. And in an away game against Vasco da Gama, the crowd were keen to see the Molissimo, Pelé's 1000th goal. When Andrada, Vasco's Argentine goalkeeper, prevented Pelé's first attempt, the crowd in Rio's Maracana Stadium were furious. Even Vasco da Gama fans. At halftime, Santos were down 1-0, and Pelé remained scoreless. Vasco were desperate to prevent Pelé scoring, with their full back even heading an own goal to keep Pelé from his record. Scores were now level. But after Pelé was brought down in front of goal, the referee pointed to the spot, and history was made. 80,000 fans were jubilant. Both Vasco and Santos supporters acknowledged the king of football. High fences around the ground prevented spectators invading the pitch, but there were so many journalists and photographers there to record the moment that Pelé was swamped. Across Brazil, people would remember where they were for the Molissimo. In the second half of 1969, the Brazilian team was back into qualifying matches for the upcoming World Cup. The final match of the South American qualifying round was against Paraguay, in front of a home crowd in the Maracana Stadium. Though Brazil was undefeated in the qualifiers, Paraguay was just one game down, and a loss for the home side would see the two teams on equal points with the need for a playoff match. The crowd of 183,341 remains a world record attendance for a qualifying game. Brazil would be happy with a draw, but Paraguay needed to win to force a deciding extra game. At this time, only 16 teams could make it to the finals tournament. With England as the current cup holders and Mexico as the next host nation, both guaranteed positions, the contenders were playing for only 14 spots. At halftime, neither side had managed to score. As the second half got underway, the light was fading. Finally, in the 78th minute, Gerson on the left made a shot on goal that bounces off the goalkeeper and is put away by Pelé. Brazil made it through to yet another World Cup tournament. To this day, it remains the only team to have been at every final series. Pelé had shown no sign of following through on his threat not to be involved in the next World Cup, but the whole team was aware that just playing beautiful football may not be enough to get Brazil to the last game. Brazil's 1970 World Cup campaign was headquartered in the Mexican city of Guadalajara. Though everybody was entranced by the footballing superstars, they were not the favourites. Coach João Saldanha, who had seen the team through a flawless qualifying campaign, had been making enemies. He said that Pelé and Tostão would not play in the same team, even suggesting that Pelé might be dropped. But Saldanha himself was dropped, and Mario Zagallo found himself in the manager's job. At first he was reluctant to make any changes that would adversely affect public opinion. The turmoil generated by the last-minute coaching changes left the team looking vulnerable. This actually worked to Brazil's advantage. Years later, Pelé discussed the pressure that comes with being the front runner.
Normally, I don't like to be the favor, because always when the team is the favorite team to everyone, they have a problem. I think if the World Cup was today, Brazil has a big chance to win the World Cup because they have a good team. But to be the favor, I don't feel comfortable. Because every time in my life where I saw the team come to the World Cup as a favorite team, they lost.
Mario Zagallo managed to develop a disciplined team that still left room for individual flair. The world had glimpsed his tactical creativity when, as a player, he changed the role of the midfielder to an attacking player. But it was widely believed that the defence was weak, and Brazilians had little faith in the squad's goalkeepers. Playing alongside Pelé was Tostão. He regarded Pelé as a kindred spirit and had an understanding about where he would be. Jairzinho was another attacking player in an attacking team. He had just recovered from a twice broken right leg. Pelé was concerned about avoiding injury. Rough treatment had plagued his two previous World Cups. The tournament in Mexico would use a new system of yellow and red cards to make absolutely clear when a player was warned or sent off. In addition to his on-field and training duties, Pelé was now having to devote time to his young fans. He was good at this. In the month before competition started, Brazil played an unofficial friendly match against a combined team from Guadalajara city. The Brazilians needed to adjust to local conditions. Not only would the competition be held at the peak of summer, but altitude would be a factor. Guadalajara at 1,590 meters and Mexico City at 2,240 meters both presented difficulties for athletic ability. Any game time was valuable for the players to put into practice the guidelines that Mario Zagallo was giving them. Defenders were allowed to come forward if the situation was right. The team was rehearsing ways of transforming to different configurations without becoming vulnerable. Brazil would be in Group C with Czechoslovakia, Romania, and the big threat England, the defending champions. The crowd at the Estadio Jalisco watched in awe as Zagallo's system kicked into action. The well-drilled team that still made allowance for players of genius was being watched closely by other World Cup teams too. England, who had a reputation as the best defenders, still felt that although Brazil had a devastating attack, they were fragile at the back. Critics were saying that a team of champions is not necessarily a championship team. Not many believed this, except the nervous audience back home in Brazil. In the end, no one was surprised that Guadalajara City went down to Brazil 3-0, with Rivelino, Clodoaldo and Pelé all scoring goals. Early in the group phase, Brazil met England. Satellite technology now meant games could be televised internationally. Matches against European teams started at midday to suit European viewers. England started confidently with several long-range shots that tested goalkeeper Felix Miele. Soon came a moment that lives in the memories of all who saw it. Pelé's shot on goal was perfect, but Gordon Banks's reflex save was better. Then at the other end, Lee's header was saved. As the game progressed, the temperature rose to 37 degrees. Because of the early start, FIFA had agreed to a new substitution rule for players without injury. Both sides were fierce in attack, but in the second half, the heat was causing England to wilt. At the 100-minute mark, everything changed. Tostão passed to Pelé, who passed to Jairzinho. Brazil's supporters in the Estadio Jalisco went wild. England had been regarded as their strongest opponent. But England were not finished. Manager Alf Ramsey brought on Astle and Bell for Bobby Charlton and Francis Lee, and the team went all out for the equaliser. Though they had chances, England just kept shooting wide. Brazil kept trying for some insurance, but in the end, Jairzinho's goal was the only score. In the final, Brazil dominated against a tired Italy. They triumphed 4-1. Brazil had won the Jules Rimet Trophy for a third time. This was the same trophy won by Uruguay at the first World Cup in 1930. The winner's name was inscribed at the base, and the statuette was held until the next tournament. But the charter stated that any nation winning it 3 times would get to keep it. The prize had spent World War II hidden under a bed, and it had been stolen in England and buried, only to be dug up by a dog named Pickles. The golden statuette of victory would now stay with Brazil forever. But nothing is so simple. In 1983, the Jules Rimet Trophy was stolen from the Brazilian Football Confederation's headquarters in Rio. Though the thieves were caught, they had melted the trophy down, and the prize that Pelé and his teammates had worked so hard to win was lost forever. On July 18, 1971, Brazil played Yugoslavia in another landmark match. Pelé had announced that he was retiring from the national team, and more than 138,000 packed the Maracanã Stadium to see O Rei wear the Brazil shirt for one last time. During his long career, Pelé had set many records, but this was different. The outcome of the match was unimportant, though Brazilians assumed that their team would win. Yugoslavia was a worthy opponent. The nation had fielded a World Cup team for the first competition in 1930, and at that time they had performed well in 5 World Cup tournaments. But the sight of the legendary number 10 jersey on the field was irresistible. The Yugoslavs certainly knew they were in hostile territory. Every time Pelé went near the ball, the crowd went wild. Brazil would come out victors 2-0 with goals to Revellino and Gerson. Even though the king did not score, it didn't matter. After the final whistle, he was swamped by the press. Like so many times before, the crowd had come to see Pelé. He paid tribute to the Maracanã with a lap of honor. It was said that he couldn't score because of the tears in his eyes. On a television show, Pelé explained why he was retiring from the national team.
Olha, é o seguinte, eu acho que a gente deve saber quando parar, né? E eu dei tudo mesmo na minha vida ao futebol brasileiro, à seleção brasileira. E entendi que agora, depois do tricampeonato, chegou a hora de eu deixar, entende? Eu completei 30 anos agora, não alcançaria chegar a outra Copa do Mundo, que é em 74 na Alemanha. Se chegasse, talvez eu só iria comentar. Então, eu resolvi dar oportunidade à seleção brasileira.
Then viewers got a glimpse of an experiment with a new career path.
Meu bem, porque depois perdão não tem.
Santos continued to play international exhibition games to show Pelé to the world. This match was against the Egyptian national side, the Pharaohs. Pelé was still playing well, and he could still draw a crowd. Never has a player been so strongly associated with one club. Pelé had helped to make Santos a dominant force in football, and Santos had made Pelé the best-paid sportsman of his day. Yet there were problems with the king's finances. Unscrupulous business associates had sent him broke once, and Santos had helped him re-establish himself. Pelé now had investments in a range of places to ensure against any recurrence of his previous money problems. He was also guaranteed a share of the proceeds from Santos's off-season tours around the world, and he was starting to look beyond playing to the next stage of his life. A sportsman's playing career is necessarily short, and Pelé recognized that he was slowing down. Playing exhibition matches in distant places was one thing, but he did not want his adoring public in Brazil to see him struggling against quality opposition. When Pelé joined them, Santos was struggling, but thanks to him, the club had built a solid base. Today, it remains a force in Brazilian football. Santos beat the Pharaohs 5-0. One of Santos's more interesting exhibition games was against the Chicago All-Stars from the newly formed North American Soccer League. The Latino community had turned out in force to see their hero, and he didn't let them down. The game was an eye-opener for all concerned. Though the crowd of 14,000 was small by Brazilian standards, it was beyond anything that the organisers had hoped for, and the rockstar response that Pelé got made Americans sit up and take notice. Head of the NASL was Phil Woosnam, a former West Ham United player. He needed stars like Pelé to lift the profile of soccer in the US, and he made the king a lucrative offer. But Pelé was now looking toward retirement and declined. He would not finish his career playing on AstroTurf. To avoid being mobbed, Pelé was summoned from the field early. Santos won 5-1. After Pelé finally retired from Santos in 1973, he started on a project that remains close to his heart to this day. He began a series of training clinics around the world. He said, "I want to bring soccer to the countries where it is undeveloped." He was passionate about this, and he knew his fame would attract big numbers. This skills and fitness session at the old Empire Stadium in the Maltese capital Valletta drew not just boys wanting to learn from the master, but there were several camera crews, and the seats were full. This emphasis on fitness had been important to Pelé's success. After receiving injuries early in both the 1962 and 1966 World Cup campaigns, he had to focus on regaining his full capacity via specially tailored exercises. But he understood that front-runners would also get more injuries, many of them not accidental. Being fitter than your opponent meant that you had a better chance of avoiding damaging situations on the field. Though skills work with young players became a theme in Pelé's life, he was about to confront new difficulties that would change his plans. As a minor shareholder in a rubber company, he had signed a document making him responsible for a corporate bank loan that had gone bad. For a second time, Pelé faced bankruptcy. Soon he and Rosemary were in New York signing a contract worth $4.5 million to play for the Cosmos in the NASL. This was a huge advance for the game in the US, but the people of Brazil were outraged that their hero had sold out to the Americans. However, Pelé had driven a hard bargain. Cosmos owners Warner Communications, as part of the deal, had agreed to establishing a football school for poor children in the Santos area. By the time the king ran onto the field wearing green and white, it was revealed that he had also insisted on a Brazilian-US program for the exchange of coaching expertise across a range of sports. The New York Cosmos were investing in big names. Germany's Franz Beckenbauer, the Kaiser, was also playing in green and white. Like Santos, New York Cosmos embarked on a series of high-profile exhibition matches. This one was against hard-hitting Italian team Lazio. Pelé's influence was now extending beyond his ability to score goals. He was one of a select few that started lifting the profile of the round ball game in the United States. But most of the players had taken positions at Cosmos late in their careers and soon realized that the standard was not all that good. Team harmony and discipline had fractured, with Brazilians only passing to Pelé and the few American players complaining about the domination of their English teammates. And the NASL was messing with the rules. Americans didn't like seeing drawn matches, so if a game was still even after extra time, one player starting from the 35-yard line would dribble toward goal in an attempt to beat the goalkeeper. For his first 2 seasons at the New York Cosmos, Pelé, though he was bringing fans through the turnstiles, was not able to make much of an impression on his new team's standings. Other teams in the North American League were reluctant to follow the Eastern club's lead and spend so lavishly on fading stars. Infighting within the team continued. It was as though the Cosmos was a team shaped by accountants, not by a strong and visionary coach. Pelé's enthusiasm dwindled, and he began fulfilling only the bare necessities of his contract. He was losing condition, and it looked as though his final year with New York would end in disgrace. But halfway through the season, a very sudden change of coach brought quick results. The match against Lazio was typical of Pelé's time with the Cosmos. Their games were well attended, with the giant stadium regularly seeing crowds of 40,000, but results were patchy. They lost to Lazio 3-2, and little was done to achieve long-term support for the game in the United States. With Pelé's playing days coming to an end, the Cosmos organized a tour so the world could say farewell to the king of football.
I feel very, very, very sorry because I love soccer. And it's like a part of my life I lost. But it's very important when you stop in good shape, when you can't stop in good shape. Of course, I'm gonna miss a lot. I'm gonna be around. I'm gonna stay in a nice state. I asked to the coach if I can practice with the teammates sometimes. But it's important you stop when you are in a good position, in the top of your career. I know I'm gonna miss, no doubt about.
Are you gonna go back to Brazil?
Yes, October I'm back to Brazil, and gonna do things there. And then maybe in the season, I stay 2 months and a half, 3 months with the team at the Cosmos because I want to see games, to be around.
After Tokyo, the New York Cosmos continued on to Calcutta, where they would meet Mohun Bagan, Asia's oldest football club. The reception at the airport was overwhelming. Everyone knew that Pelé was popular, but this was something different. It was clear that he had become a global brand. Other players like Giorgio Chinaglia were ignored. Chinaglia would go on to become the Cosmos' most prolific scorer. Defender Brian Rowan was also bemused with the media response his teammate was being subjected to. The match against Mohun Bagan in front of 100,000 people was a 2-2 draw, but the result was not important. People just wanted to see Pelé play, and increasingly just to see Pelé. He was accustomed to the media glare, and his easy, polite manner endeared him to the public.
Always when they come in another country, foreign country, I try to make the people happy, because I know everybody is the same in life, you know? Then I love the people love me.
But this was the end of his playing career. He was uncertain about what to do next. In conjunction with soft drink maker Pepsi, he embarked on a series of youth clinics to nurture talent in economically deprived parts of the world where plentiful talent was limited by lack of opportunity. He had no interest in a coaching role, yet he wanted to stay close to the game. He had been a generous contributor to children's charities, and this type of work allowed him to combine his humanitarian concerns with his passion for football. Although Pelé still described himself as a simple country boy, others saw him very differently. Just after his retirement from football, Brazil's ambassador to the United Nations said of Pelé, "He spent 22 years playing soccer, and in that time he has done more for goodwill and friendship than all of the ambassadors ever appointed." Though he had re-established his financial security, he could not forget his humble origins and was keen to help young people find a way out of poverty. Here in Kenya, football had huge grassroots popularity, and although the athletic ability of the young players showed great potential, none were making the jump to international teams. Pelé had influenced young people's attitude to the game in Brazil, and he was working to have players from developing countries take on a similar role. This became a media quest to find the next Pelé. And to this day, talented young footballers are burdened with the epithet, the new Pelé. But for Pelé, these types of football clinics were about more than just improving skills. He believed to be a good player, you had to be a good person. These training exercises should also build character. Years later, he explained to young people in Mexico advice from his father that had guided his life.
Yo, cuando empecé a jugar, mi papá me decía siempre, oiga, tú quieres ser un gran jugador, tienes que se preparar, porque el don de jugar fútbol, Dios te lo dio. Esto no hizo nada. Ahora, si tú fueras siempre un buen muchacho, un buen hombre, siempre respetando la persona, siempre respetando el oponente, ahí sí usted va a ser un gran jugador, porque tú vas a ser mejor hombre de que deportista.
To celebrate his 50th birthday, 17 years after he had left the New York Cosmos, a charity match had been organized. Milan's San Siro Stadium was the venue, and a healthy crowd was there to see the king once again. He'd been in training, so he would not disappoint his fans. Pelé led a Brazilian side against the rest of the world team. The match was such a success that it would be the first in a string of similar charity matches. Pelé's work with youth has been a constant throughout his life, and he still retains a peculiar aura. Even though these players were born long after his on-field career ended, they still know what he achieved and hold him in high regard. This tournament brought together student teams from schools in Brazil, Bolivia, South Africa, and the United States. They experienced other styles of play, but the international contact was also promoting understanding, and the United Nations was taking note.
Bom, eu sempre defendi, não é, a ideia de que o esporte é a melhor maneira e a maneira mais rápida, mais fácil de tirar as crianças das drogas, das ruas, não é? E é por isso que eu sempre, desde quando eu comecei, quando eu fui ministro, que eu defendia, entende, e pedia para todas as sociedades, para os governos, investir no esporte, porque o esporte, você tira a criança das drogas. Então é um caminho muito mais fácil. É por isso que todas as vezes que tem torneios infantis, juvenis, eu estou lá. Pode me convidar que eu estou indo.
The emphasis is on football played to a high standard. Secondary benefits like tolerance and respect are instilled as part of the game.
Es una gran satisfacción no solo para mí, sino para toda la gente que está aquí, especial para Tawichi, que yo creo que para cada uno de los jugadores de nuestro equipo es un ídolo y me da más ganas de jugar y salir campeón en este torneo, ¿no?
For us, it's about learning experience and getting to know how other countries play football.
The international popularity of football keeps Pelé travelling for most of each year. He graciously does the ceremonial duties that go with the opening of new playing arenas like this one in northern Greece. He's keen to see local games and he always has his eye out for developing players. Because he sees so many young players, he has acted as talent spotter for English Premier League club Fulham. Pelé's ability to attract publicity remains undiminished, and he cheerfully smiles and waves at the cameras and poses with fans. And there's always press conferences that give him the opportunity to spread the message of goodwill via football.
As you know, the football is, the way to put people together. And today, the biggest family in the world is the family of football. FIFA has more associated than UNESCO than the ONU.
In 1992, in Rio de Janeiro, a special tournament was organized between underprivileged children from Kenya and Brazil. But this was just an adjunct to a much larger event, the Rio Earth Summit. And Pelé's role had changed as well. He was now acting as a UN ambassador for ecology and the environment. His travels had allowed him to see firsthand some of the problems experienced in the world's less developed areas. Pelé's message was expanding. He had come from poor origins, and he instinctively understood the need to improve living standards around the world. But now he was linking this to the quality of the environment. His young audience had heard about ball handling skills outside. Now he was talking about clean water and clean air. This was a role he took seriously. During a meeting with the German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder, he returned to the environment.
Tem uma mensagem muito importante para dar para todo mundo, que é o problema da água no mundo. Nós, daqui a 20 a 25 anos, podemos ter um grande problema de água em todo o mundo, e a FIFA está fazendo uma campanha, fazendo um movimento para chamar os jovens para maior proteção, que é uma coisa muito, muito importante. E eu fiquei feliz porque o chanceler disse que se precisasse dele, que ele estaria na campanha conosco para orientar as crianças para cuidar e se preocupar com o desperdício de água em todo o mundo.
Finally, at a press conference in Paris, UNESCO did formally appoint Pelé as a goodwill ambassador.
In very many ways, Pelé can be a precious asset to our organization in promoting not simply sport, but the essential values of sport, which are not so different from those of a culture of peace that, as you know, is the most important program of UNESCO. And I thank you very much for accepting.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
In Brazil, Pelé was making a different type of contribution. President Fernando Henrique Cardoso appointed him to the position of Extraordinary Minister for Sport. He used this position to curb corrupt practices in Brazilian football administration, introducing legislation that became known as the Pelé Law. Just before the 1998 World Cup in Paris, FIFA announced the World Football Team of the 20th century. Present to receive the honor were Carlos Alberto, the captain of Brazil's 1970 World Cup team, Nilton Santos, defender in 3 Brazilian World Cup sides. Alfredo Di Stefano from Argentina. He played for River Plate and Real Madrid before a successful coaching career. And of course, Pelé, still regarded as the best ever. Other players nominated included Johan Cruyff, Franz Beckenbauer, Diego Maradona, and Michael Platini. After the ceremonies, Pelé was keen to air his ideas about the future of the game.
What I fight, what I look, is to the players participate more. What we like is a more democracy. I think Mr. Blatter knows that. Everybody wants to change. I think they're going to change. All right.
Honours just keep flowing for Pelé. When the streets outside London's Buckingham Palace were festooned with Brazilian flags, it was to mark the awarding of a knighthood to Pelé for his humanitarian work. Pelé was now an honorary Knight Commander of the British Empire, and he was mobbed the following day at a function at Chelsea's Stamford Bridge home. Representatives from the British government said they liked the enthusiasm that Pelé can generate, and that the integration of sport with community development helps to overcome inequality and disadvantage. There is one team of young players that Pelé watches very closely: Brazil. During the lead-up to significant tournaments when Brazil are preparing, Pelé is usually there. Naturally, he loves Brazil and he keeps an eye on players' form, understanding who they will be up against in opposing teams. But sometimes he's called on as a mentor. Ronaldo's career bears similarities to Pelé's. He burst onto the scene at just 17 and went on to World Cup glory. And, like Pelé, he suffered serious injury. He ruptured a tendon in his right knee during a match with his Italian side, Inter Milan. Despite the best medical attention and intensive physiotherapy, it looked like the injury would finish his career, and Ronaldo was losing hope.
Realmente passei a acreditar mesmo na minha recuperação, talvez depois que o Pelé, né, teve na minha casa e que me comentava sobre uma lesão que ele teve em 1966 e que muitos médicos ameaçaram a carreira dele, dizendo que não poderia mais voltar a jogar futebol. E ele ficou 1 ano e 6 meses recuperando e retornou bem e ainda ganhou o Mundial de 70. E essas histórias realmente me motivaram, essa principalmente me motivou para eu não desistir e para eu continuar lutando para recuperar.
Pelé convinced Ronaldo a complete recovery was possible.
Se fizer um bom trabalho com ele, não forçar a obrigá-lo a ser o Ronaldinho, a ser um Pelé, ou a ser um Maradona, ou a ser quem for. Se não obrigar, deixar ele jogar normalmente, eu acho que ele volta a jogar o seu futebol.
He did, and went on to win the FIFA Player of the Year award for a second time. The lead-up to the Beijing Olympics saw Pelé at the Forbidden City. Rio de Janeiro was in the running to become the host city for the 2016 Olympics, and Pelé was in Beijing as goodwill ambassador, lobbying his capital's proposal.
It's a big responsibility for me to represent all the players, all the sports players in the world, and to be here to congratulate those heroes, those boys, and congratulate also the big success from the Olympics here. This means a lot for me. And then I take this opportunity to ask to you, Rio de Janeiro waits you for 2016.
The International Olympic Committee had shortlisted Rio along with Chicago, Madrid, and Tokyo. Because the Summer Games had never been held in South America, people believed it was Rio's turn, but the city was leaving nothing to chance. Pelé was the Rio proposal's secret weapon.
Para os meus amigos brasileiros, é uma responsabilidade muito grande estar aqui representando o nosso Brasil, lutando para conseguir a Olimpíada para o Rio de Janeiro, se Deus quiser, não só para o Rio de Janeiro, para o Brasil, mas para toda a América do Sul. Se Deus quiser, nós vamos conseguir. Começamos com a luta aqui e vamos seguir em frente. E eu fico feliz porque vocês veem que ainda o povo todo me respeita depois de todo o tempo que eu parei de jogar futebol. E eu espero não decepcioná-lo. E se Deus quiser, nós vamos chegar lá. Obrigado.
At another press conference during the Beijing Games, Pelé was back with a team and a slick presentation. Rio had tried for the Games in 1936, in 2004, and in 2012. And there was a feeling of inevitability building around this proposal. Having recently hosted the Pan American Games, Rio already had much of the sporting infrastructure in place, and the country's rapidly expanding economy meant that an Olympic budget was well within reach. It's impossible to underestimate Pelé's contribution. His charm and easy wit continue to endear him to the press.
In my time, professional could not be in Olympics, unfortunately. And with the respect to all the Brazilian, if I was there, Brazil will have the medal.
These days, presidents and prime ministers are happy to be seen with the man that retains the aura of the most skilled football player ever. His standing continues to grow through the responsible use of his popularity to advance concerns about underprivileged children and the environment. Rio de Janeiro won the 2016 Olympic bid, and Brazil will also be hosting the 2014 World Cup. This man, the king of football, will continue to remain at the heart of world sport. 1,280 goals, 3 World Cups, top goal scorer in the Campeonato Paulista 11 times, 9 in consecutive years, 31 team trophies, FIFA World Cup Golden Ball, and the best player who has ever played the beautiful game.